Before we get to your questions, we've got samples, and Wayne, you have something that went to slaughter, but it's still pretty interesting, right?
Yeah, I caught this on Tuesday morning. I was hoping I'd keep it alive for the whole 2 days, and well, it kind of died on me. But this is a giant water bug. This time of year and also in the fall, the adults will be flying around. I get lots of calls at those time frames, people wondering, oh, what's this gigantic, monstrous thing I found in my yard next to my porch light or something like that. And they're just trying to disperse and find those new water holes at this time of year and also in the fall.
So they're just cool.
They're cool. Don't ever pick one up with your bare hands when they're alive. You might get bitten and it's going to hurt.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. All right, Zach, a Tupperware full of something grazable?
Grazable, I guess so, but I guess bad news or good news, I'm not sure which one you say. With the record high temperatures that we had, the soil temperatures have skyrocketed over the last few days, and we now have approached the temperature where crabgrass is starting to germinate. Yeah, and this is crabgrass that I actually dug out of my own lawn. I have a brand new lawn. It was a bare soil, south-facing slope, relatively sandy, and so it was dry, and so it warmed up very quickly. And I think this is foxtail, believe it or not, and already in its 2-leaf stage, and so we have crabgrass, foxtail, and other annuals starting to germinate already, and so now is the time on turf soils. The soil temperatures will be a little bit cooler, so we still have about 3 hours to put down our pre-emergent herbicides, but I would get them down as soon as possible. I was out in Broken Bow last Wednesday, and we have annual grasses germinating out there also. Okay. So spring, early summer is officially here.
So we had hurry up and wait, and now we have too late.
It's too late.
Okay.
Almost.
Thanks. Lauren, you have something unfortunate in a rose.
Well, it just depends. This is something that, we always say rogue it out. So this is one you could rogue out, I guess, if you're in your landscape and you see some leaf patterns that are not typical. This one where you can see the lighter colored veins on the leaves. This is a nice example of rose mosaic virus, which again is any of our viruses are systemic infections. And when we see that plant is always going to have that infection. And then it really kind of becomes an issue of if you have other roses in your landscape and if the plant is being affected adversely by it, then you definitely would want to rogue that plant out. I can tell you this is one that is actually in my landscape, and I just, leave it there. It's the last one. It's doing okay. Eventually it will die. And it will die more rapidly than those that are not infected.
So it's one of those things you keep for our viewers.
I keep for the viewers, yes. Okay. I do a lot of things for our fans.
Okay, Kelly, you sent us actually some great pictures for your samples since you couldn't really bring this in.
That's right. Yeah, my sample is actually a picture, and hopefully they'll be bringing it up here pretty soon. But this is at Prairie Loft in Hastings, and this is an example of rainwater harvesting. You can see the rain barrels there in the background, and in the foreground is a rain garden. And we all know in Nebraska that rainfall is definitely more sparse than abundant, especially last year. And so, we want to make the best of it when we do receive it. So a lot of times our properties are designed for that, to get rid of that rainwater as quickly as possible. Get it off of the property and get it out to the street and down the drain into the storm drain, and it's kind of treated as a waste. So rainwater harvesting methods allow us an opportunity to treat that as a resource to be used. So since rainfall is usually sparse in Nebraska, let's make the most of it. And of course, a rain barrel, that's an old-fashioned method that's coming back, and we all know how those work. Collect and temporarily store some rainwater to use to water container gardens or whatnot. But the rain garden is a little bit more new type of garden, and really it's just kind of a shallow bowl somewhat. It's located where it'll collect runoff from a rooftop or maybe the upslope of a lawn. And these are not water gardens, they're not bogs. The water drains away in typically a few hours, but in minimum, usually 12 to 24 hours if you get a larger rainfall. So make the most of that rain when we get it, slow it down, soak it in, and you can find more information on our water.unl.edu website.
Great, thanks, Kelly. Okay, Wayne, you get the first question with the picture. This is from a viewer. Let's see, they don't really tell us where they were, but they have sent us a what is this bug picture, and Aurora. And they wonder whether they should worry about it or enjoy it.
All right. Now, if it was this time of year, I would go with a painted hickory borer. They're coming out right now. They will infest recently dead hickory trees. So this could have come out of someone's firewood pile. If there's a wooded draw that had some trees that died from last year's drought, could have been a source for this. If it was later in the year, it might be a locust borer. But again, nothing to really worry about. Just keep your trees healthy.
All right, excellent. We've had a lot of interesting borer pictures this year. Okay, Zach, this is a help with multiple exclamation points picture, and the thistles are taking over the garden and the backyard. They've tried spraying, digging, et cetera, coming back with a vengeance. So how do we, and this is a very recent picture, so how do they take care of a rosette like that with a thistle?
Yeah, the thistles. The thistles are difficult because they have they spread by underground roots, which are thick underground roots, and so even when we spray a herbicide, they might not get down to the roots. And so these are always best controlled in the fall when you get translocation. In the spring they're difficult. You can try burning them back. Digging them out doesn't do any good because it just spreads them. And so wait until the fall. Make a couple of applications once the garden is done. Make a couple of applications, preferably with probably triclopyr. That's probably the better of the products out there. Three-way. It's a
Tough one.
It's a pass.
There's a reason that they're not.
Pass.
There's a reason they're considered noxious.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Lauren, we've had a couple of questions about this, and this particular viewer who's in Arcadia took some great images. This is Canada Red Chokecherry, has a lot of these growths on it, and he says it reminds me of smut on corn. Individual branches. He's been removing them by removing the affected branches back to where they attach.
Wow.
And he wonders whether
That's
pruning
amazing.
back is what he will handle the problem, or does he need to do something more?
That is just beautiful, though.
It's
You know,
artwork.
the nice thing about
admire it.
this, and this is black knot, and the nice thing about black knot is smut goes away quickly in corn, but this, if it's there, you can watch it for years, and it is beautiful. But anyway, pruning it back about 3 to 5 inches up towards the main portion of the tree is going to be the best way to manage this. There's not really too much else. Just sanitation is the best control for black knot. And really just really be diligent with that and make sure that you're just pruning that out anytime you see that. Another thing, a source for that is often wild plums. So I don't know where this is at, but if you're near a rural area or something where you have the wild plum thickets, you might look on the roadside close by or something and maybe even try to manage it there because it is going to be moving in. It has to come out of one of those masses for an inoculum source.
All right, thanks, Lauren. Kelly, your picture is from a viewer who found this on the here in Lincoln,
Okay.
and she simply wants to know what it is, and I think she sent us a couple of images of this particular tree.
Okay. Well, you can tell what this tree is by the bark, and this is, most likely it's an American sycamore, although there is another one called the London plane tree that's related. But most likely it's American sycamore, and they can there you can see the very kind of white bark. It's mottled, gray, white. Sometimes there's more colors in it. It's a huge tree. A huge shade tree, so it's kind of a coarse textured tree. It also has a very large leaf. So we typically recommend that it be planted in park situations, golf courses, or if you have a really large yard, then it's okay to plant there as well. I like the tree. Another name is buttonball tree right now. If you look up those bare trees, you'll see these round balls hanging up in there, and that is actually the fruit, and that's just a cluster of a globe of seeds. And if you pull them apart, the kids love to pull them apart because they're real fuzzy and they blow all over the place. Sycamore, I said it's coarse textured, but it also gets a disease called anthracnose. I'm looking at Lauren, but it does get a disease called anthracnose that doesn't kill it, but it can kind of kill small branches and twigs, so it's kind of a messy tree too. But I like them.
All right, you get the next picture, Wayne, and this is a viewer who found this spider last fall, but sent us a picture wondering what it was. She said it was as big as a mouse. And she wants to know its scientific name and is it native? So you've provided us with a number of great images that are a little clearer.
Yes. The first two are both Lycosa aspersa.
Lycosa aspersa.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a wolf spider.
Okay.
So it's a nomadic hunter. Runs around and hunting whatever it can catch that's small enough. Typically, pets and small children are okay. And then the third picture, when that comes up, that one is a Carolina wolf spider. The other one, I'm not aware of the common name for it, but this is Hogna vigna for this one.
Okay, and
They're
they're
typically fall,
Yeah.
not a problem, other than they're a bane to the crickets that are around.
and they're creepy. Creepy.
All depends on how you look at them.
Creepy. Okay, Zach, you get the next question. All right, so this is a couple of images that are an ID, and they're wondering what it is, but then the real issue is if it's annual ryegrass, perennial ryegrass, or rough bluegrass, would it have come in a bag of blue tag or certified seed, because that's what this particular owner used? And if so, why would that happen?
Yeah, it's hard to tell from a picture like this exactly what it is based on even there. That picture is kind of out of focus, but it's got pointed leaf tips, and so that's probably a ryegrass. It's probably perennial ryegrass, I would guess. But either way, any of these can show up in a blue tag labeled seed. Blue tag merely guarantees what's in the bag is on the label, and vice versa. And so all three of those species are sold as cultivars and as species, and so those are purchasable, and so those can easily be on a blue tag labeled seed. In their right setting, any one of those three are more than adequate. In Nebraska, we would prefer not to have rough bluegrass or Poa trivialis or perennial ryegrass. We'd prefer to have Kentucky bluegrass. But blue tag seed, it's worth the money because the quality is usually better, and plus it just guarantees what's in the bag.
All right, great, thanks, Zach. Okay, Lauren, you get the next one, and this is timely based on when the morels are ready. This viewer wants to know what this thing is, and is it a good thing or a bad thing? And apparently they're new to country living. They don't ever remember seeing this in Omaha, so this is probably on a cedar of some sort.
I thought the picture was absolutely beautiful.
Isn't that
The way they
great?
got the contrast with the white and everything. I mean, that is just, somebody took some time here, and I really like it. But outside of that, that's a cedar apple rust gall, and that's a nice indication that it's time to go look for morel mushrooms. And it's something that is cycling. If you have apple trees in your landscape, that's where the spores come from for cedar apple rust. So it is also an indication of a time to protect those trees if you have susceptible trees in your landscape as well. It's not usually going to hurt the junipers enough to worry about it too much, and you can just simply pull them off. I've only seen a few cases where you have enough that you'd worry about managing it on the juniper.
All right,
But
great.
nice thing, not edible.
Thanks, Lauren.
I would like Wayne to comment on edibility of some of these giant insects that he's been showing, because some of them look like that could work.
A nice meal.
In the streets of Thailand,
They
you can
eat-
find giant water bugs bigger than that one that they're
On a
selling on the
stick?
street. On a stick.
Sounds good.
Don't suggest that our state fair ends up with something new on a stick.
Iowa might take that one up first.
Okay, Kelly, you also have an ID question. This is a viewer who lives actually in the North Bottoms here in Lincoln. They have a vine spreading all over the yard. Despite pulling and digging, apparently the fight has been going on for generations. She wants to know what it is, and is it impossible?
It probably is impossible I think the vine is one. But it's a Virginia creeper, or woodbine is another name of it. It's one of our native vines to Nebraska. And it's very vigorous. It can get 40, 50 feet long easily. It's very woody. And gosh, if they've been trying to control it for generations, or at least a couple of generations, I think it's winning. The only other thing I could suggest, unless Zach has something else to recommend, but would to be go out there and start doing the spot treating with the Roundup. But you have to really stay on top of it. I mean, you can't let it come back and grow for a while. You just got to be out there constantly anytime you see little pieces coming up. And then it still might take another generation maybe. But it's actually a beautiful vine, and it has beautiful red fall color in the fall, blue berries, as opposed to white berries that you'll find on poison ivy. And you notice it had the 5 leaflets. This can have 3 to 5 leaflets, and that's what distinguishes it from poison ivy that only has 3 leaflets. So a lot of people do bring this in to me, and they're worried that it's poison ivy. But it's Virginia creeper.
Great, thanks, Kelly. And the birds will bring it back, even if the Roundup gets it
And I
right.
would, Roundup is probably okay, but I would still go with a systemic broadleaf herbicide, like again, multiple fall applied applications. That sounds like a broken record, but
Yeah, no,
seems
that's
like tonight
probably
is a
better.
troublesome weed insect disease night.
Okay, Wayne, you get a picture, or I'm sorry, not a picture, a question. This is a Hastings viewer, and they have a question about termite control.
All right.
They're saying pods with attractants to kill them and put them in every 10 feet or so, and then supposedly the termites go back to the colony and it kills the rest of the population, and they're wondering if this works.
Right. So the simple answer is yes, they do work. The longer answer is what they do with those pods. They place them around the structure at those intervals, and they start with baited, non-lethal pods in there, so that they check those regularly. When they start feeding on those baits, then they go to the insect growth regulator laced baits, and then they put that in, and then that gets taken back to the colony and helps get spread around.
Okay, so there's a little bit of a process, but it definitely works.
It does definitely work. It's
All
a
right.
nice way to watch for them, but not have to necessarily treat your whole house for it.
Great, thanks, Wayne. All right, Zach. Bindweed. It is the evil weed night. This is a desperate cry for help, and this is in Scotts Bluff. This is a viewer in Scotts Bluff. They want to know of any way to get rid of it outside of covering the entire thing with plastic and wood mulch.
Bindweed it's already out. It's a perennial, and so it has emerged. It emerges from crowns and stolons, and it's out. I've seen it on my driveway as well as other places. If it's in a lawn, anything with quinclorac is really good on bindweed. Obviously, in a garden or an ornamental bed, quinclorac has its problems because it's probably going to affect the rest of the ornamentals or flowers. But if it's in a lawn, quinclorac is really a top-notch product.
Okay, so this one's in the garden. So then what do we do?
This one's in the garden. Like pull it back as far as you can, I would guess.
Pull it and pull it and pull it.
Pull it and pull it and pull it. Move the garden to a different place, and then hit that with quinclorac. Yeah, that one's a lot. That one's a lot. Pre-emergent herbicides don't work with this because it's a perennial. Any kind of post-emergent selective herbicides inside of a garden is really are difficult.
How about glyphosate?
You could probably wick on glyphosate, but again, glyphosate isn't a great broadleaf herbicide. It's not bad, but the other ones dry would be better. You might be able to try to wick on anything that contains quinclorac.
Okay.
The glove of death. You could try that.
Okay, excellent.
You'd be crawling around on your hands and knees all over the garden, though.
Yeah, that's a
It's a tough. Yeah.
commitment. Okay, Lauren, Kelly mentioned sycamore. She identified it, and we already actually have a question about the disease that is disfiguring of sycamore anthracnose, probably. And is this going to be a year when we should watch for it? And if so, what do you do about it?
Well, a couple things. With sycamores, if it's a large tree, first, it's very difficult to treat that tree, and it almost takes like an injection or something like that. So I don't know if I would recommend that. For most of the time, it's not going to kill the tree. Early on, when you're establishing a tree, though, it may be beneficial to do some fungicide applications. It will look like it'll disfigure the leaf itself. You'll have leaves distorted. The veins will typically on the underside have some dark discoloration on them. Would be some of the symptoms. When we have wet conditions right around bud break and initial leaf formation, that's when we tend to see a lot of anthracnose, and then that will continue through the season. So we're kind of past that window, but if you had a younger tree you were establishing and you were having a lot of this, you could consider just a general type of fungicide, just any of the landscape fungicides that would be systemic, with a propiconazole or something like that, would have some activity on that. But I wouldn't recommend it on a large tree.
All right, thanks, Lauren. Kelly, this is a Bellevue viewer who has a question about planting a Baldwin burlap tree.
Okay.
And it's a little bit of controversy, actually, but his question is whether he should remove the cage and the burlap, or leave them on, or remove the burlap only and just leave the cage on.
Okay, yeah, there is a little controversy around that. I think anytime you can remove it all without the root system falling apart or being damaged, that is the ideal thing to do. I would definitely remove, sometimes it's such a large ball, and it's very heavy. And by the time the best thing to do is to set it down in the hole, and then start cutting away that ball and that burlap. And I would cut as much of the wire cage away as well, because initially it may be okay, but down the road you can get some girdling of maybe some large established roots or whatnot. And a lot of times if you leave the burlap on, it can wick moisture away from small roots, or you can get the roots growing in a circle in in the hole, in the planting hole, and they don't establish very well. So the ideal is to remove as much of it as possible. If that's difficult to do, set it down in that hole because it's so heavy, and cut as much of it away as you can.
All right, so let's see. You get the next picture, I believe, Wayne, and that one, as I recall, if I can pull up my right picture here, which is not in front of me, so hopefully it'll come up on the screen. Let's see. Oh, it's the ragging and lindens. Ragging and lindens already. And that's this is silver linden, but we're seeing the same thing in American linden and little leaf linden. And the viewer's question is this of great concern?
Well, if my sources are correct, and maybe Kelly can help me out here a little bit, the lindens tend to rag a little bit when the leaf's unrolling and coming out anyway. So this could be purely a natural phenomenon that they're not really sure why it happens. Am I good there, Kelly?
Right, you're good.
Okay.
You're good there. There's
then-
plenty of leaf surface there. There's plenty of green. If it is just the natural wind tatter, is another name for it. And there's plenty of green leaf surface to photosynthesize and do what it needs to do.
Another possibility that you can run into is cankerworms. We're about to that point where spring cankerworm's going to be out, and you're going to be seeing those around. But then again, just like Kelly said, there's plenty of leaf surface there and nothing to worry about.
Excellent. Thank you, Wayne. All right, Zach, this is another weed question. It is an ID and control question for this little bitty thing that has taken over a front lawn or some sort of a lawn. And we may have a second picture of that one that's a little closer up on the flower itself.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, that's common chickweed, which is a winter annual, and it comes in throughout the winter and a little bit early in the spring. Will germinate in the fall, and then survive all winter long, and then comes and grows with a vengeance all spring long, and sets seed, and it's going to be dying here with these temperatures. And so, control number one: get a thick turf, because it invades thin turfs. Easy to say after last year's summer damage. So get a thick turf, and secondly, applications in late September through October will control that for this spring.
All right.
Excuse me.
Okay, Lauren, this is an image for you, but I know you and Kelly talked about this one off air a little bit. And this is a viewer who has white spots, or I'm sorry, this is the hops one. So this is a viewer that has hops vines, and then the hops vines are kind of doing this. They're on the south side of a building, and they're doing that, and it's new leaves that come out, and then all of a sudden they have this sort of not great looking portion of the leaves shrivel up and die.
Okay, well, and I'm trying to determine there if there's any distorted growth on that. If it's like a growth regulator or a viral type thing, because there are some viruses of hops, or if it's just wilting and dying. If it's just wilting and dying, I would be a little concerned about, maybe if there isn't some sort of a crown and root rot on the vine that way. Mm-hmm. And so I would look into making sure, it's in a site that, has decent drainage, these types of things. It's not being overwatered, that type of thing. If it is something that you see any irregular type patterns on the leaves and the rest of the plant, like we showed the viral symptoms earlier, then I would be more concerned about something that may be something that you really would need to replace it.
Okay, thanks. That might be worth a sample.
Yeah, that probably would be on that, yeah.
Okay, all right. Kelly, this is also a sad plant, but I think this is probably not pathological. This is a viewer, and they don't tell us where they are in the state,
Okay.
but they have PJM rhododendrons, and they are on the west side of the house. And I'm not sure our viewers can see it real well, but you can see kind of some fainter
Right. The
yellowing of the foliage
Right.
in
The
that
leaves.
plant.
The leaves are yellow, and the veins are still green, and so that tells me it's most likely like an iron chlorosis. And rhododendrons do like an acid type soil, and we do tend towards high pH or alkaline soils, which can tie up iron. So that's part of the situation. The other thing is it's growing on the west side, which is a very stressful location for rhododendron. Unless there's a lot of shade trees there providing some shade, they actually prefer to grow on the north side of a house, for example. So just that stress may be compounding the problem. But other than if they want them there and they want to keep trying to grow them there, then they could try, putting on some chelated iron or something such as that and seeing if they can get some green up.
All right, so we're going to do some questions, and Wayne, we are out of images because we've got no insect stuff going on. But I do have an interesting question that is triggered by national news, and that would be the 17-year emergence of the cicadas in New York, and what can we expect, and is this a really cool thing?
Yeah, they've been getting a lot of media attention nationwide. And the 17-year cicadas, as the name implies, they come out every 17 years. There are different broods across the country. The one that's coming out right now is the brood 2. They come out when soil temperatures reach 64 degrees and above. So with Zach's little note here, we are to that point. However, they will not be coming out in Nebraska. Unfortunately, not. They'll be coming out from the northern part of North Carolina up to New York City area, and a little bit west of there, but not this far west. Next year, we do have the brood 3 coming out in Iowa, primarily. 2015, we have brood 4 in Nebraska.
Just in time for the International Master Gardeners Conference. That's fun. Okay, thanks, Wayne. Zach, you do have a picture, and this is a viewer who laid some sod. There it is, getting ready to be unrolled in a rather old established neighborhood. And their question, and it got laid before the 101 degree temperatures. Their question is, what should they do to manage newly laid sod?
Most important thing is when you're laying sod is to prepare the soil. Most people think sod is idiot-proof, but it's when you prepare the soil, you have to prepare it just like you do with seeding, tilling and loosening the soil. And then once, as you're laying the sod, make sure the soil is a little bit moist. And I always like to take the plastic netting off the soil, off the sod if it comes with plastic netting. You never know what's going to happen later on, and you have to get in there and till or work around or anything, and you'll end up balling up that netting. So get rid of the netting. And then once it's down, be careful with herbicides until it's fully rooted. Make sure it's keep water to it almost as long as you would as a new seedling. You won't have to do it as often, but infrequently, but a little bit deeper, and you'll have to baby it well into the fall. And always lay fresh sod. Try to get it down as soon as you can off the truck, and especially as the temperatures go up, that period where it stays fresh and alive shortens. And so in days, now we're in the 80s. Get it off the truck easily within 24 hours, preferably 6-8 hours. That's why we buy local. We buy sod locally or in refrigerated trucks.
Okay, great. Thanks, Zach. All right, now, Lauren, we have an image that I know you and Kelly talked about, and this is a viewer who has watermelons and had these white spots occurring and wonders what causes them. Is it a disease or what is it, and how can they be prevented? And this viewer doesn't say where they are. If that makes any difference.
When I looked at this, I really thought maybe it was associated with where the seeds would be. Many times, as you see, even with like seeded types, around the seed as that fruit matures, it will often soften and discolor. And I thought maybe on the, the seedless types that maybe this was around, the aborted embryos basically or something. And I don't know if there was something else, Kelly, I think you had mentioned maybe, but.
Well, another thing is called white heart, and I know when we say heart, we think the center of it, but I don't think it necessarily has to be the center, but that's just hard white spots or streaks in the watermelon, and that can be caused by overwatering and probably a little bit too much nitrogen when that fruit is maturing. So it can be physiological too.
Okay.
The other thing that I'm wondering, and I'm wondering if any of our viewers are wondering this, on who the expert is on the 17-year life cycle insect.
Somebody who's old.
That has to be hard to study. Poor guy.
Well, you have a long study time.
They're all
17 years.
There are 12 different broods, so you do have out of a
Something to study
17-year
all the time?
cycle, you have 12 out of those 17 years
Okay.
that have a brood coming out.
There you
Wow.
go. The insect accommodates the research.
That's
Okay, Kelly, you also have a
fascinating.
picture, and we've had a lot of questions about spruce death this year. This is actually a couple of different viewers, but tops of the 50-foot Colorado blue spruce lost needles, and then dead-looking sections throughout the tree. Trees, again, are about 50 years old, so they're wondering, is this a drought issue associated with other things, and can those trees be saved, or is it time for starting over?
Well, looking at the picture here where you get that one chunk of brown kind of in the middle, it almost reminds me more of Cytospora canker, possibly, which is very common in spruce. But yes, Kim, we're seeing all kinds of things on spruce, and I know you've been talking about it the last couple of weeks, but we're seeing drought injury a lot of times. That's maybe on the south side, the west side, but it can be top down. It kind of a brown color, a mauve color, yellow. We're seeing really weird things that is drought related. But that particular picture, I thought maybe was more likely a Cytospora canker, which, as Lauren would say, you really can't control it. And we do tend to see it on spruce after stress years.
Really
like
favored
drought.
by drought.
Okay, and again, 50 years is pretty good lifespan for a spruce, too.
Right.
So lots of things in that one. Okay, thanks.
Chainsaw.
Yeah. Chainsaw. You and your chainsaw. Okay. All right, Wayne, we have another termite question. This is where you can actually buy a termite growth inhibitor. Have you heard of that?
Probably a growth regulator is what
Okay.
they are referring to.
Okay.
You do have to be careful with some of those. Some of them are listed as a restricted use.
Okay.
And they require special equipment to apply correctly.
Okay.
So unless you have the special equipment or you're willing to purchase the special equipment, and if it's a restricted use, probably not for you. The best thing to do would be to hire a professional.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Wayne. Zach, this is a viewer who has had issues growing turf by the street, probably in that strip that we have several names for. The city has for years applied chemicals and salts for snow removal. Any suggestions?
I would probably use something non-biological. I would try planting maybe pavers to begin with, see how they do. Concrete is also very nice at this time of year. It's just a really tough place because invariably you have compacted soils, you have concrete, you have peat gravel, you have a lot of heat, you have cars running over it, you have everything not conducive to anything living. So that being said, you could try some
Something
pavers.
non-living.
Something non-living. Yeah, it's just really. Or if you want to spend a lot of time on it, water it really frequently, aerify it often. It's going to take a lot of time. You can go in there, depending on where you live. Kentucky 31 or a turf type tall fescue would be fine. Kentucky bluegrass would be fine, but it's going to take a lot of work. And then the first person who drives into that area just ruins all your work, and you have to start over.
Yeah.
Pavers.
There's some nice strips of mixed plants, but again, they take a lot of
Yeah,
a lot
it's just
of care.
it's just a real. I was in a meeting yesterday talking about these areas, and it's just very, very difficult, and it's just very it's hard. So I would go with pavers at about 3 per foot.
Okay.
Would be the recommended rate on pavers.
Thanks. Lauren, is it time to begin thinking about controlling black spot in roses, and if so, with what?
Actually, given the year we're having, I look for it to be coming on any time now. So I would look out for that. There are a lot of different fungicides out for roses. Make sure you have something that's systemic and will give you a longer window. A mycobutanol product, a propiconazole product, one of those would work fine.
Okay, thanks, Lauren. Kelly, this is a Syracuse viewer that has narcissus that are 3 years old. They haven't bloomed. The buds form, but they don't open. They're in full sun in a flower bed. Any
Yeah,
idea on that one?
Not really, other than maybe planted too deep, because narcissus is fairly easy to grow. So I would either replace them and not plant them. You have to plant them kind of deep. They recommend that, or maybe the soil's too wet, or maybe there's too much. Well, it says full sun.
Okay.
I would start over.